Bandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahakanaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishikam Vitam Sya Om Ajnana Timiranda Shagyanajana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurkam Gurganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipunam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Vidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavad Prem Noe Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubharam Madeka Sharanam Nyashishwara Sridharam Banshakopatarubyasya Kripasindu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the hidden treasure of the sweet absolute, with translation and commentary by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj. And this is translation from the Bengali by Sripad Sagar Maharaj. So this is chapter 13, Prakriti-purusha-viveka-yoga, distinction between matter and spirit. So I'll start with text number, or verse number 20. Prakriti-purusha-viveka-yoga vidyanadi ubhavapi vikaram-scha gunam-chaiva vidi prakriti sambhavan. Know that both material nature, Maya, and the person, individual soul, are beginningless. And know that the transformations, body, senses, and their functions, and the transformations of the modes of nature, such as pleasure, pain, sorrow, and delusion, are born of material nature. Know that both material nature, Maya, and the person, individual soul, are beginningless, and know that the transformations, body, senses, and their functions, and the transformations of the modes of nature, such as pleasure, pain, sorrow, and delusion, are born of material nature. So material nature is also existing eternally, and the individual soul is existing eternally. But when we are in the illusion of this material nature, under the illusion of Maya, then we identify ourselves with the body, and of course the body is not eternal. And the objects with which we surround ourselves in this material world, they are also not eternal. But the material nature is continually being manifest and then also existing after dissolution and in unmanifest form. But both the soul and the material nature are eternal. And sometimes it is said that the living entity in the material nature is described as but a jiva. He's under the illusion of the material nature. And it says elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamai vamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Mamai vamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manashastan indriyani prakriti stani karshati. So we're being continually deluded by the material nature. And that will go on until we can get the mercy of the devotees of the Lord and the Lord's mercy. Then we can come out of this illusion. karya karana kartritve hetu prakritir uchate purusha sukha dukkhanam bhoktritve hetur uchate. Material nature is said to be the cause of the production of effect, the body, and cause the senses. The person in material bondage is said to be the cause of the condition of being an enjoyer or sufferer of happiness and unhappiness. So all this comes about that we, by our consciousness, put ourselves into a particular situation in this body and identifying with that, and then we're subject to the control of the senses. And the person in material bondage is said to be the cause of the condition of being an enjoyer or a sufferer of happiness and unhappiness. So we can say on one level, according to one's karma, one will be enjoying or suffering, but one goes on acting in such a way to increase one's material bondage, to perpetuate it. If one doesn't, if one is not able to make some change in one's life and take shelter of the Lord and his devotees, that will go on with he'll go on with his illusion in the material nature. Purusha prakriti stohi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosha sadasad yoni janmasu. Being situated within material nature, a person enjoys the modes born of material nature. His attachment to these modes is the cause of his repeated births in higher and lower species. So, as we've heard so many times, one is not guaranteed to always have a human body. There are 8,400,000 species, and we've heard so many times that if one's consciousness devolves, and that is always happening according to one's situation with the material nature. Maybe someone will talk to us about the evolution, always going up to a higher state of being, evolving to a higher state. But there's also de-evolution, where one can go to a lower state of consciousness and lose or misuse one's opportunity to have a human body, which can award one the chance to develop Krishna consciousness. It's true, the animals and other species, they're not responsible for accumulating karma. They're just acting out their situation according to karma. But still, they're also suffering under the control of the material nature. So we should utilize the opportunity of this human birth, manusha, this manushanam sahasreshu kaschid yadazi sedaye yadatam api siddhanam kaschim mam vedi tatvara. So a special opportunity to get a human body, then one can develop, one can come out of the shackles of material nature and situate oneself in a real position in relation with the Lord and the devotees. Then people think, oh, well, who wants that? Well, you do. You should. That will be the source of your real happiness. You have no idea of what is the happiness of spiritual life. You only know what it's like to be a dog on a leash. And the leash is under the modes of material nature are gunas. They're like ropes. So they have you on a nice dog leash. So somebody may be on a leash made out of gold, sattva gun. Oh, very nice gold leash, but you're still being yanked around. Or maybe your leash is made out of something like some other metal. And then it's a mode of passion, rajagun. Or maybe your leash is just made out of some scratchy rope, and that very irritating. Tamagun, mode of ignorance. But according to one situation, the modes of nature, one is being controlled in that way. Being situated within material nature, a person enjoys the modes born of material nature. His attachment to these modes is the cause of his repeated births in higher and lower species. Upadrashtanu mandacha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapi ukto dehesmin purusha para. Being situated within material nature, a person enjoys the modes born of material nature. His attachment to these modes is the cause of his repeated births in higher and lower species. I think we just read that. That's 22. So now I read the translation at 22. I should have read the translation of this Sanskrit that I just said. Upadrashtanu mandacha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramat meti chapi ukto dehesmin purusha para. The Supreme Person, the witness, sanctioner, support, guardian, and Almighty Lord, within this body is known as Paramatman, the Supersoul. The Supreme Person, the witness, sanctioner, support, guardian, and Almighty Lord within this body is known as Paramatman, the Supersoul. So that Supersoul is situated within the heart, and that Supersoul is also, or Paramatman, is there with the Jivatma, with the individual. So there are two, the Paramatma and the Jivatma. And we can say the Paramatman is more like a witness, is witnessing the activities of the conditioned jiva soul, in one sense, not directly partaking or participating in those activities, but seeing that. Ya evam veti purusham prakritim cha gunai saha sarvata vartmano sarvata vartamanopi nasa bhuya bijayate. Ya evam vedi purusham prakritim cha gunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasa bhuyo bijayate. Thus one who truly knows the Supreme Person and material nature with its modes will never in any circumstances have to take birth again. Thus one who truly knows the Supreme Person and material nature with its modes will never in any circumstances have to take birth again. Because the Supreme Lord is knowable only by devotion. Bhakti mam abhijanati yavanyas chasmi tatvata tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. And only by devotion when one knows the Lord, and when one comes to that consciousness of knowing the Lord, then Bhakti mama bhijanati yavanyas chasmi tatvata tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. Then one can enter into the association of the Lord, knowing the Lord in that way by devotion. Jane not mani pashyanti kechid atmanam atmana anye sangyena yogena karma yogena chapare. Jane not mani pashyanti kechid atmanam atmana anye Shankyane Anye Sankyane Yogena Karma Yogena Chapare Jnanenat Mani Pashyanti Kechid Atmanam Atmana Anye Sankyena Yogena Karma Yogena Chapare. With their pure consciousness, some persons see the Supersoul within the heart in their meditation. Others perceive him through enlightenment, and yet others by the yoga of selfless action. So that yoga, selfless action, is karma yoga. Within some persons perceive the Lord jnanena by meditation. They're able to perceive the Lord by meditation because the yogi who meditates is actually doing meditation. That yogi can come to know the Paramatman or Paramatma in the heart. So jnanena pashyanti is able to see through meditation. Kechit atmanamatmana. And Pashyanti Atmana Kechit. And some are able to know the Lord, or this within the heart, and others are able to know the Lord through enlightenment. That's Sankhya Yoga, that they're engaged in that. Sankhya Yoga, which we heard about we heard previously about Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, then Sankhya Yoga, there's Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga. Here, Krishna is saying some persons may approach him in this way, some persons may approach him in the other way. Sankhya Yoga, knowing that, is chapter 2, the constitution of the soul. Those persons are able to know him by these different paths according to the level of their perception and realization. They may not, to know the Paramatma is not to know Swayam Bhagavan. When it comes to the point of understanding the Lord within one's heart, the yogi can perceive that. And others may know the Lord through some meditation, and others are engaging in selfless action. But their level of realization will lead them to a particular perception. It won't lead them to understanding or knowing the Swayam Bhagavan, Krishna. They won't come to it, but they'll know something along the path. Anye tvevam ajananta. Anye tvevam ajananta shrutvanebhya upasate tepi chatitarant yeva mrityum shruti parayana. Anye tvevam ajananta shrutvan yebhya upasate tepi chatitaranti yeva mrityum shruti parayana. Further, there are those who, not knowing of these methods, engage in the worship of hearing the scriptures. When their faith is deepened by such hearing, they too surpass the mortal plane. So they, as Krishna has said, he says, Vedaischa sarvam, that he is situated in the heart of every living entity, and he's the knower of present, past, and From him comes knowledge of past, present, and forgetfulness. So read these. What is that verse? Vedais cha sarvairaham eva vedyo vedantakrid veda vedeva chaham. He's the knower of the Vedas, he's the compiler of the Vedas, and by the Vedas he's to be known. Sarvasya chaham bridi sanivisto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedais cha sarvam vedais cha sarvam vedais cha sarvam okay. Vedais char sarvam eva vedanta krid veda vedevacham. Further, there are those not knowing of these methods engaged in worship by hearing the scriptures. When their faith is deepened by such hearing, they too surpass the mortal plane. Sarvasya chaham riddhi sanivishto mata smritam jnanam apohanam cha. Vedais cha sarvam no. I just said the verse and then immediately forgot it. So. Fifteen. Sarvasya chaham bridi sanivisto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedais cha sarvam aham. Forgetting the last. Sarvasya chaham bridi sanivisto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedais cha sarvam Vedais cha sarvairaham eva vedyo vedantakrid veda vedeva chaham. Okay. So Krishna says, I'm the knower of the Vedas or scriptures, I'm the compiler of the Vedas, and by the Vedas I'm to be known. Further, there are those who, not knowing of these methods, engaged in worship by hearing the scriptures. When their faith is deepened by such hearing, they too surpass the mortal plane. And don't forget verses. Okay. Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam stavara jangamam chetragya samyogat tadvidi bharatar shaba. O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, whatever is born in the world, whether moving or stationary, know it to be manifest from the combination of the field and its knower. O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, whatever is born in this world, whether moving or stationary, knowing it is to be manifest from the combination of the field and its knower. And Krishna has said that the field is the body, the knower of the field is the living entity. But Krishna has also said, I am the knower also of all. I'm the knower of all fields of activity. All fields, which the knower of everyone and what is going on. So, although he's not directly participating in the activities of the material nature, but still, Krishna is the knower of what he's saying is that our consciousness is limited to our particular perception of reality. But Krishna's consciousness goes beyond all the limitations that we have, and he is actually the knower of everything. So that's what he's saying. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinas yat svanina shantam yapashyanti sapashyati. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashat svav vinashantam yapashyati sapashyati. One who sees the Supreme Lord situated equally within all beings as the imperishable within the perishable, such a person sees perfectly. One who sees the Supreme Lord situated equally within all beings as the imperishable within the perishable, such a person sees perfectly. So the Lord is ultimately, the material nature is one of his energies. The spiritual nature, or the spiritual consciousness, the marginal consciousness of the living entities, and also the Mayic consciousness, the consciousness in this material world. And although the Lord may be perceivable through the eyes of Shastra and everything, and he may be perceivable by us within our heart, he may be perceived as guiding our actions, but at the same time, he's not involved with the actions and reactions of this material world. One who sees the Supreme Lord situated equally within all beings as the imperishable within the perishable, such a person sees perfectly. Samam pashyani sarvatra samavastitam ishwaram na hinasti atmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. Such a person with the vision of equality, seeing the Lord dwelling in every place alike, does not deceive himself, and thus he attains the supreme destination. Such a person with the vision of equality, seeing the Lord dwelling in every place alike, does not deceive himself, and thus he attains the supreme destination. So normally persons are praying to the Lord for some favor, and sometimes it involves victory over someone else. But they don't see that the Lord is equally disposed towards everyone. So I heard the parable that a man, a thief, in the darkness is looking up at the house on the hill of a rich man. And he's thinking, this is a very dark night, and this darkness favors us thieves. So I'm praying to the Lord that I can rob from that rich man's house and not be caught. And the man up on the house on the hill is looking out into the darkness and saying, oh, it is a very dark night that favors thieves. So I'm praying to the Lord that I will be protected from any thieves who may come in the night. So both the thief and the rich man are praying to the same Lord, and each of them wants a favor from the Lord that, if granted, will cancel out the favor of the other person. So what can the Lord do? So sometimes a thief is successful. Sometimes the thief is captured and the rich man is successful. So, but the Lord is, as it says here, one who sees the Supreme Lord situated equally within all beings as the imperishable within the perishable, such a person sees perfectly. Such a person with a vision of equality, seeing the Lord dwelling in every place alike, does not deceive himself, and thus he attains the supreme destination. He's not seeing through the eyes of a partial vision. He's not thinking that the Lord will favor him and not favor someone else. But it doesn't. Life in this world doesn't work like that. But it's rather a childish perception to think that the Lord will grant me whatever my wishes are so that I can attain some material happiness. I mean, sometimes we may be totally overcome in this world, or totally, just totally conquered by our karma. And ultimately, we can see that. Who in this world is favored by eternal life? Nobody. So, there's that perception. Prakriti-purusha-viveka-yoga karmani kriyamanani sarvasya yapashyati tatatmanam akartaram sa pashyati. Prakriti-purusha-viveka karmani kriyamanani sarvasya yapashyati tatatmanam akartaram sa pashyati. He who sees that all actions are brought about only by material nature sees himself as non-doer. So as long as one is engaged in this material world, actually one is a non-doer, because we're all spirit souls. Our nature is spiritual. So what activities do we have on the mundane material plane? And until one is able to overcome one's vision of being enjoyer of this material world, of this material nature, till one is able to rise above that vision, one will be engaged in activities in illusion and think that he's doing something, but actually he's just being moved around. One who has proper vision will see that until one comes to the devotional plane, one is actually a non-doer, and the actual activities of the spirit soul will only be perceived when one is acting in the service of the Lord. Yada bhuta pritagbhavam ekastam anupashyati tata eva cha vistaram brahma sampadyate tada. When such an enlightened person realizes that the different types of beings are situated within the one nature, and that they are made, and that all are made manifest from the nature, he attains realization of Brahman. So if one is able to see the living entities all in this world, all within the control of this, we could say, the material nature, that they're all within this one nature. Then some person will say everything is one, and such persons may be able to, by their realizations, come to an understanding of Brahman. As we said, Brahmiti, knowing Brahman, the effulgence coming from the Supreme Lord. But then a partial vision, anaditvan nirgunatvat paramatmayam avyaya sharirasto pikonteya nakaroti nalipyate. O Arjuna, since the Supersoul is beginningless, transcendental, and inexhaustible, although also present within the field, within the individual soul, he neither acts nor is affected by any action. And it is said, as we mentioned in the Svetasvatara Upanishad, that the description is that the that the living entity situated in this tree, we can say this material world, and is going from branch to branch, tasting different fruits. Some are sweet and some are sour. But the Lord is compared as Paramatma as to the witnessing bird who's just watching the activities of his friend, tasting all these different fruits on different branches, some sweet and some bitter. But when the one bird tires of this activity of just tasting all the fruits of this material nature, then he can fly off with the Arjuna, since the supersoul is beginningless, transcendental, and inexhaustible, although also present within the field with the individual soul, he neither acts nor is affected by any action. But if the living entity tires of his involvement, the example given, then the one bird who is subject to the tasting and enjoying this material, they can fly away together. Heard that example in the Svetasvatara Upanishad, example cited from there. Yata sarva gatam sokshmyad akasham nopalipyate sarvatra vastito dehe tathatma nopalipyate yata sarva gatam sokshmyad akasham nopalipyate sarvatra vastito dehe tathatma nopalipyate. As the most subtle element of space pervades everything, yet is not tainted by anything, similarly the soul, though pervading the body, is not tainted by it. As the most subtle element, space, we'll say, of the elements, there is space, then there is air, then there is fire, then there is water, and then the earth, and everything in this that we're perceiving, like table, whatever, it is all made of these five elements. But the first, most subtle element, space, or sometimes called ether, that is pervading everything, but it is not mixing with the other elements, so to speak. As the most subtle element of space pervades everything, yet is not tainted by anything, similarly the soul, those pervading the body, is not tainted by it. Ultimately everything is situated within space, but space itself is not affected by the actions of the other elements. As the most subtle element of space pervades everything, yet is not tainted by anything, similarly the soul, though pervading the body, is not tainted by it. Yata prakashayati eka, yata prakashayati eka, kritsnam lokam imam ravi, kshetram kshetri tata kritsnam prakashayati bharata. O Bharata, as the one sun illuminates the entire world, the occupier of the field illuminates the entire field. The occupier of the field, the body, illuminates the entire body with what? With consciousness. His whole body, because the soul is present, is illuminated with consciousness. O Bharata, as the one soul illuminates the entire world, the occupier of the field illuminates the entire field. Kshetra kshetragyayor evam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param. Kshetra kshetragyayor evam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param. Those who, through the eyes of knowledge, can thus distinguish between the field and the knower of the field, and who can thus know the path of liberation of the living beings from material nature, such persons attain the Supreme. Those who, through the eyes of knowledge, can thus distinguish between the field and the knower of the field, and who can thus know the path of liberation of the living beings from material nature, such persons attain the Supreme. So it's a very beautiful, nice example, the field and the knower of the field. Then you can understand that example, and yet most people are so much in identification with the body that they believe that they are the body. That's who their existence is. It's defined by what body they have, and then they have various upadis. Upadis means false designations in respect to the body. So if you ask persons, they'll give you all this identification based on their bodily existence, whether their race or their age or their nationality or their sex or their height or their weight or their religious affiliation or their political identification, and identify themselves in so much, and they're carrying around so much baggage, and it's all called upadis, it's all called false identifications that they make in relation to this body. And so it seems obvious, the distinction, the field and the knower of the field. But although it would seem so obvious, it's not really that obvious to persons who are unaware of their entanglement within material nature. So here, Kshetra Gyayor Evam Antaram Jnana Chakshusha Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha Ye Vidur Yanti Te Param. Those who through the eyes of knowledge can thus distinguish between the field and the knower of the field, and who can thus know the path of liberation of the living beings from material nature, such persons attain the Supreme. So they can know, if they can distinguish between the field and the knower of the field, then they can know how to get out of the entanglement of the material nature by the consciousness. It will all lead them to understanding ultimately their relationship, or some aspect of their relationship, as the eternal servant of the Lord. They'll come to understand something on one level or another of that actual consciousness. Iti Shri Mahabharate Shata Sahasriyam Samhitayam Mayasikyam Bhishma Parvani Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Panishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Prakriti-purusha-viveka-yoga Nama Trayodasha Jaya. End of chapter 13. Distinction between matter and spirit, from the conversation of Sri Krishna and Arjuna in Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishad, the yoga scripture of transcendental knowledge, in Bhishma Parva of Sri Mahabharata, the holy scripture revealed by Srila Vyasadeva in 100,000 verses. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jarabaya Nama Haraya Nama Krishna Jarabaya Nama Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopa Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Gopa Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinatha Maranamohan. Giridhari Gopinatha Maranamohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra. Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunath. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. Jai Te Vignana Shabisa Puran. Jai Te Vignana Shabisa Puran. Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas. Echai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas. Kasabar Padarinu Mora Panchagras. Kasabar Padarinu Mora Panchagras. Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas. Tader Charana Sevi Sanibas. Janame Janame More Abilas. Janame Janame More Abilas. Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Echai Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pare Majai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pare Majai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narotamadas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narotamadas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narotamadas. Nam Sankirtana Kohe Narotamadas. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charyasta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charyasta Tara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Sunanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghunath, Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Premzi Go, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Srila Jayam Vishnupad, Vishvabarenya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jayam Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Shri Dham Mayapur Ki Jai, Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Saparshada Sriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Shri Koladvip Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram Ki Jai, Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan, Sham Kunda Radhakunda, Kalindi Yamuna Ju Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. What day is it on the calendar today? Do you remember? Huh?
The disappearance of
Yeah. Lokanath goes, Shri Lokanath Goswami Tirubab Mahotsav Ki Jai. Okay. Okay. When we sing Shri Guru Charana Padma.
Should we sing it now?
Yes, by?
Yeah.
Pardon me? No, when we sing that, there's mention of Lokanath. By Narottam Das of Lokanath Das Goswami, right? Shri Guru Vaishnava.